In loving memory of. Chapter 1. In a world where time only moves forward, the idea of reliving cherished memories or experiencing important events all over again was just a dream, until the scientists made a breakthrough. They had discovered a way to duplicate the brain structure of any individual, allowing them to create an identical simulation of their consciousness. These simulations were so realistic that people could use them to relive their own memories or experience the memories of their loved ones. However, these simulations were limited to the day when the brain scan was carried out, since the technology was able to decode only the short-term memory and the surrounding synapses, while the long-term memory was too fuzzy and disparate to be workable. The world was overflowing with these simulations, each one an exact replica of a person's mind during important moments such as anniversaries, weddings, and other significant events. People could literally revisit those special days and experience them all over again in real time, with every detail captured perfectly. Once inside the simulation, they were completely immersed, unaware that they were in a simulation, to begin with. One company, in particular, had cornered the market on this incredible technology, Mindscape. They offered subscriptions that included periodic brain scans. There were rumors that the most wealthy were getting daily scans in hopes of somehow achieving immortality. For those who didn't want to commit to a subscription, there was also the option to purchase a single-day simulation. Mindscape had become a household name, synonymous with reliving cherished memories and experiencing important events all over again. People couldn't get enough of it, and the demand for their services only grew with each passing day. Chapter 2. Ava had always been close with her sister, but after their parents passed away, they slowly grew apart. Yet, they were all each other had left in the world. So when Ava received the news that her sister had been in a terrible car accident and was now in a coma, she was devastated. Ava's heart raced as she rushed to the hospital, knowing that her sister was in critical condition. When she arrived, the doctors told her the grim news: her sister might not wake up at all. Ava's world shattered at the thought of losing her only remaining family member. Filled with regret for the disconnect between them in these recent years and desperate to hold on to a piece of her sister, Ava remembered the Mindscape technology. With tears streaming down her face, she made the difficult decision to have a brain scan done on her sister, capturing her consciousness in a simulation before the accident. She knew it was the only way to keep her sister close, even if she never woke up from the coma. Ava waited several weeks before entering into the simulation. Her sister had still not woken up, and Ava was desperate for some kind of connection with her. On the day of the simulation, Ava woke up with a sick feeling in her stomach and a pounding headache. But it would cost even more to cancel today's simulation and reschedule. She took some cough syrup and painkillers to ease her symptoms before heading to the Mindscape building nearby. Chapter 3. Ava arrived at the Mindscape building, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. She approached the front desk, where a receptionist greeted her with a smile. "Hi, welcome to Mindscape," the receptionist exclaimed. Ava hesitated. I have a simulation. I would like to visit my sister's simulation. Here is my reservation confirmation." "Great, I'll need you to sign a few forms before we begin. And please, take a seat over there," the receptionist pointed to a comfortable-looking chair. As Ava sat down, she felt her heart rate increase. She couldn't believe she was about to enter her sister's mind, to experience what her sister went through in the last moments of her life. After a few minutes, a technician arrived and escorted Ava to a private room. The technician explained that Ava would be wearing a virtual reality headset that would transport her into the simulation. The headset would send electrical signals to her brain, allowing her to experience the simulation as if it were real. "You'll be playing the role of your sister in this simulation. You'll see, hear, and feel everything she did on the day of the accident. And remember, this is just a simulation, but you have to live it to the end. You won't know that it is a simulation and therefore, you won't be able to interrupt it," the technician said. Ava nodded, feeling a lump form in her throat, wondering what else was written on all the forms she signed. But she was ready to do this, to experience her sister's last moments and perhaps find some closure. "Okay, let's get started," the technician said, helping Ava put on the headset. Chapter 4. When she woke up in the simulation, she immediately felt a sense of familiarity with her surroundings. As she went about her morning routine, she noticed that nothing seemed to be working properly. The coffee maker wouldn't turn on, the toaster wouldn't pop, and when she tried to call her boyfriend, the phone was dead. Frustrated, she decided to leave for work. As she made her way to work, she noticed that the steering wheel was on the right side of the car, which was unusual for her. She didn't question it too much, but it did make her feel a bit disoriented. The sun was still rising, and its blue brightness made it hard for her to concentrate on the traffic. She thought about what to buy as a present for her sister next week. This was going to be her opportunity to finally rekindle their relationship. But her thoughts were interrupted by a loud siren. As she turned her head toward the noise, she saw a giant truck with devil-like horns and lion-like teeth heading straight at her. Fear and adrenaline surged through her, and she braced herself for impact. The next thing she knew, she was waking up in the same apartment, but everything felt different. The memories of her dream flooded back to her. She thought she had an accident. She then went about her morning routine. She made herself some toast and washed it down with some filter coffee to the background noise of her radio. Before leaving for work, she sent a message to her boyfriend asking if he has a gift idea for her sister's birthday next week. During the usual trip to her office, the rising sun was making it hard to see the traffic fully. She thought about what to buy as a present for her sister next week. This was going to be her opportunity to finally rekindle their relationship. But her thoughts were interrupted by a loud siren. As she turned her head towards the noise, she saw a giant truck hurling towards her with all brakes shrieking like the stallions of the apocalypse. But it was too late. Her traffic accident dream was coming true. When the simulation finally ended, Ava was disoriented and confused. It took her a few moments to remember who she really was and where she was. Chapter 5. Ava's eyes slowly opened as she returned to reality. She felt disoriented and confused as she tried to remember where she was and what had just happened. As she sat up, memories of the simulation flooded back to her. She remembered living through her sister's last day twice, but the first time had been filled with strange and unusual events like a dream. It didn't make sense to her why the simulation would be like that. Ava wondered if she had done something wrong during the simulation that caused those strange events to occur. Maybe she had made a mistake or changed something she wasn't supposed to. She didn't want to ask the technician, afraid that it would reveal her own faults and failures. Instead, Ava took a deep breath and tried to push those thoughts aside. She reminded herself that it was just a simulation. "Welcome back, Ava. How was the experience?" the technician asked. Ava shook her head, still trying to process what had just happened. "It was intense. I felt like I was really there, living my sister's life." Dr. Lee nodded. "That's the power of our technology. We can create incredibly realistic simulations that feel like real life. Did you learn anything new about your sister?" Ava thought for a moment. "Not really. I mean, I experienced her routine and her daily life, but I already knew most of that. It was just different, being her instead of me." Dr. Lee smiled. "That's understandable. It can be quite a shock to experience life as someone else. But I hope it was helpful in some way." Ava nodded, still feeling a bit disoriented. "Yeah, I think it was. But I'm glad it's over. It was a bit too real for me," she smiled awkwardly. As she made her way out of the office, the employee who had accompanied her out flashed her a warm smile, but Ava couldn't help but feel like it was a little too warm. It was as if the smile had turned into a sinister grin as she was closing the door, sending shivers down her spine. As she stepped out onto the busy street, she tried to catch a taxi to take her straight home. But after waiting for what felt like an eternity, she had almost given up hope. That was until she saw a woman on the other side of the street, staring straight at her. Was she being watched? Just then, a bunch of taxis came speeding down the road, and Ava quickly hailed one. Once inside, the driver turned his head to get the destination. After hearing it, he turned back, but Ava couldn't shake off the feeling that the driver had a grin on his face, ear to ear, even more sinister than the lab technician. She tried to confirm her suspicions by looking at the driver's face in the rearview mirror, but she couldn't manage to see his mouth clearly. The driver noticed her trying to look at him and asked if everything was all right. Ava didn't answer and decided to make the rest of the journey in silence. As the taxi pulled up in front of her house, she paid the fare and got out, glad to be away from the unsettling experience of the past few hours. Chapter 6. Ava couldn't help but feel lost and alone in her room. The memories of her sister flooded her mind once more, and she felt a deep sense of sadness that she had never experienced before. She wanted to escape the reality that was now her life, even if it was just for a little while. So, she decided to take a bath. She headed to the bathroom and looked into the drug cabinet. She took out some pain medication for her migraine and swallowed a couple of pills. She then started running the bath, pouring in some bath salts to make it more soothing. She wished she could listen to music, but her phone was still charging on the table next to her bed. She wondered if it was broken and felt a twinge of annoyance at the thought. As she waited for the bath to fill up, she went back to her room and sat on the bed. She looked around the room, taking in the familiar surroundings, but everything felt different now. The world had changed for her. It was now hostile and gray. She got up and went back to the bathroom to check if the bath was ready. But the bath was freezing cold, and a sense of disgust washed over her. She didn't want to vomit, so she ran to the refrigerator to get a glass of cold water. But to her dismay, the refrigerator had stopped working too. She gulped down the whole container of lukewarm water, feeling more and more frustrated with each passing moment. Her vision started to become blurry, and she lay down on her bed, feeling drained and helpless. She wanted to call for help, but when she reached for her phone, it still wouldn't turn on. And then darkness enveloped her. Chapter 7. Lab Assistant 1. Yes, that's how we found him. He was reliving the simulation over and over again. And when we tried to shut down the system, it fried his brain. Now, he is in a coma and we don't think he is coming back. Lab Director, do we know what has caused this? Lab Assistant 2, we think Adam was doing a routine checkup on a simulation. It belonged to the last conscious day of a woman named Ava, who ended up going into a coma after an accidental overdose of over-the-counter drugs. She was registered for an automatic brain scan in case of coma or death. Lab Director, and? That sounds like a routine check. Lab Assistant 2, well, yes sir, but when we dug further into it, we noticed that Ava had a simulation appointment the same day she went into the coma. Lab Assistant 1, indeed, sir. This seems to be an edge case we never considered. The brain scan for the simulation Ava went into belonged to her sister and it was for the day she, her sister, went into a coma as well. Lab Director, I see. We can't let this mistake hurt Mindscape's image. The official story will be a heart attack. And we will stop accepting brain scans from dead people and people in comas as a precaution. Destroy all scans in this case as well. Lab Assistant 2, but sir, that's almost 20% of our earnings. It will cause an uproar both among the shareholders and the general public. Lab Director, we don't have any other option. Fabricate a public opinion poll where people request this from us on the basis of respect for the dead.